Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm really excited. I'm happy to have you here. So you are attending a session about QDeveloper and QDeveloper capabilities for SAP workloads on AWS. In today's presentation, we will demonstrate how QDeveloper can help you and your customers with either building Fiori applications, develop code, create documentation. We will dive deep in a second. But before we actually start, I wanted to ask you, did any one of you has already tried to use an AI assistant for programming purposes? Yeah, I see some of you did. OK, great. How did you like it? Did it give you any beneficial results? Yeah? So good, I'm glad to hear that. And today we will present how QDeveloper can help you as well. So I'm Shirley Cohen, nice to meet you. I'm a senior SAP solution architect here at AWS. And in my position, I help customers with their migration and modernization of SAP workloads in the cloud. Together with me, my colleague Harsh.
Hello everyone, my name is Harshvardhan Padwal. I'm also a specialist solution architect over here at AWS. I have about 8.5 years of ABAP development experience, and with AWS, my main work stream is basically we have different GenAI suite of services, right? So we are trying to figure out how we can integrate all this AWS's GenAI suite of services with SAP for betterment of our customer. Yeah.
Perfect. So just to let you know that we have prepared a lot of demonstrations for you, but we encourage you to ask questions and to raise issues that you encounter in your day-to-day work, and maybe we can see how we can sort them out in this session right now. I'm sure it's going to be beneficial for the most of you. So in today's session, we will talk about basically about the GenAI stack for AWS. We will mention it in a few sentences. We will dive deep into QDeveloper, different use cases, for example, for documentation, for code generation, for conversion of code. We will showcase the new ABAP accelerator, the extension for QDeveloper. Harsh will dive deep into this very important topic. Of course, we will leave some time for Q&A. But again, if you have any questions along the session, please feel free to raise your hand, and let's continue. OK, so let's talk about the GenAI suite for SAP, for AWS and SAP. So basically, we have the new platform, QuickSuite. Amazon QuickSuite is a platform where you can actually connect different connectors, for example, Outlook, or JIRA, and SAP, and other different systems, including calling different APIs and MCP server, and then build on top of them automations and flows. And you can use QuickSuite on QuickSuite to build dashboards with only natural language. You can build stories and summarization of your dashboards. We have also Kiro. Kiro is the new IDE from Amazon, where you can actually build vibe coding programming and also use development based on specifications. We can have also Amazon Bedrock, in which you can use to build automations also and machine learning-based applications. With the use of Agent Core, which is the new feature at Amazon Bedrock, you can build standalone agents for your day-to-day use in your companies. But today, we will dive deep into QDeveloper, and we will talk about the ABAP accelerator for QDeveloper. So let's start. So QDeveloper is not just an AI assistant for programming. OK, it's called QDeveloper, so the automatic thought is that it helps me to develop. But actually, QDeveloper is a tool that can assist you with the entire development lifecycle. So when we are speaking about SAP lifecycle for development, we are talking about specification documents. We are talking about the development itself. We are talking about Fiori applications. Fiori applications could be on UI5, could be on BTP. So there are different options. We also support different versions of SAP, for example, ECC and S4. Are there any people here that still run on ERP, SAP ECC? Yeah, OK, many. OK, so QDeveloper can help you also with migrate either to the cloud, to RISE, and also to S4. So let's start.
So Shirley, I have a good question for you. So a couple of weeks back, I was having a conversation with one of the customer. They are a big automotive manufacturing customer, and their ask was like they have about 10, 15,000 of ABAP objects which they have developed over the span of like 15 years. And the thing is that they are right now, trying to modernize, trying to move ahead. And the question that they asked me was, all these objects that they created basically, the developer, they have left the organization, and they don't know what exactly the application does, or the ABAP object report, RFCs, function module, all these applications do. So is there a way that Q developer can address this situation?
Yeah, perfect. So it's very customary that SAP customers have very, let's say, stable and pretty old systems, legacy systems, that maybe they developed the programs maybe 5 years, 10 years, and even 15 and 20 years from now. So basically, what we want to do is try to understand what we see in the code in order for us to be able to extend it. So for example, I'm a former consultant for SAP, a functional consultant, and many times when I came to different organizations, I saw very old programs that the developers were not still in the company, and the consultants kept changing, so nobody actually knew what is written in the program itself. So anytime I wanted to debug it, which is very time-consuming, could be very complex and frustrating, anytime that I wanted to extend it, every time that somebody encountered maybe a little bug that we wanted to fix it, it was very difficult for us conceptually, because it meant that we need to invest a lot of time and effort into actually understand what we have there, because we never wanted to lose functionality of the program. So basically, with the help of Q Developer, we can scan through a code, an ABAP code. This is what we see here. This is just my Z program in the SAP environment. Here you can see how I actually use Q Developer on VS Code. You see this little icon? I asked Q Developer to help me figure out what it says here in this code, because this is the basis to everything. I can't really change something, or I can't extend something if I don't understand what is written currently in the code. So I ask you, please review the code. In this case, what you saw is just copy-paste as a prompt to VS Code in the chat box for Q. But of course, it can integrate with your system, with your environment, and we will see examples for this later on in the session. But what I asked him, please create a specification document for me, explain to me what I see in this code, and the explanation is both functional and technical. So it starts with the scope, it starts with the purpose of the program, it tells me who are the stakeholders for this program, who would actually benefit from it, or actually who would have to test it after I do the changes. And then it goes down into details which are more technical. What are the classes that are being used, or what are the tables that are being used, so that I would know what can be affected. It even gives me some quality recommendations for the code, so I can improve my program as well. So we saw that we can create documentation. But if I think about the normal or the standard life cycle for the SAP program development, we start basically from the consultant, right? Or basically, we start from the end user. The end user comes to the consultant, like myself, and asks for, could be an application, could be a program, could be a report, something. He wants me to do something for him. And then what usually happens, it can be that I would go back and forth with him to understand what he actually needs, to understand the business requirements. And then I would actually try to write it, right? I would have to write the functional design. I would have to approve it with the end user. He will tell me, yeah, it's OK, maybe change this, maybe add that. And then I need to take this up with the developer and write the technical specification document, which is not very easy for me. As a consultant, it takes time. So with the help of Q Developer, we can automate this process and ask Q Developer to write the document that I want. In this example, I show you how Q Developer can write the specification documents based on the prompt. So if I explain to him What is the purpose? What is the objective of this program? Because this is what the customer wanted. Maybe he didn't know to tell me how to write it or exactly what he wants, but he told me what his purpose is. And in this case, he wanted to see how we can find discrepancies in the purchase order in this case. So discrepancies could be with quantity, could be with price, could be between the delivery or the GR process, and could be with the invoice. So just telling Q that this is what I want to achieve, I want to understand the discrepancies, he wrote a full specification document. Now let's say that I approve it, or let's say that I send it to my end user and he approved it. Now I need to create a technical document for that. So Q developer created a full structure, a full design of how the technical specification would look like with structured suggestions, like, for example, which classes to use, how the classes will be built, what tables to use, what fields, and all of this from just the prompt that explains the objective of the program that we want to write.
So Shirley, I have another question for you now that you were mentioning about requirement gathering from the end users, right? So when I was working as an ABAP developer, so we used to get our requirements for developing an ABAP application or an object from our functional counterparts. And sometimes what used to happen is some points or some functionalities are lost in translation, and we had to go in an iterative loop in order to get everything on board for our end users. So is there something that we can do with Q developer which will help the functional consultant itself to develop something out of the box, like a quick POC or a demo for the end users that they can show?
Yeah. So you know what happens, right? Because as a functional consultant, I have a lot of experience with end users that they ask what they want to ask, which is fine, which is great. And then I go to the programmer and I ask him to do, and let's say that he does exactly what was required from him. It happened many times for me that when I came back to the end user, he told me, okay, listen, that's great, okay, it looks fine, but this is not actually what I wanted. Can you maybe add a pop-up here? Or maybe I want to double-click and get to the transaction? Or maybe add some more details in this header? So all of this could be resolved if they would actually see the application before I actually would go and develop it and ask the programmer to invest his time in programming it. Because otherwise what happens is that I go back to the end user and then he tells me add some more features, and then I go back to the ABAPer, and then the ABAPer tells me, okay, but I don't have time, stand in line, or I will try to do my best, and then it takes more time. So the development cycle is much more, it could be faster, let's say. So basically, a Q developer, if I use it in BAS, in Business Application Studio on BTP, you see that I can install Q here as an extension as well. And then I can use the UI features or the UI folders that we have here for basically develop the Fiori application or the front-end screens before they actually create the program itself. So in this case, I can sit, okay? Yeah, does it work? Okay, I can sit with the end user, draw with him in the notebook. What we have here is actually a request to develop a dashboard for the production manager to just show him how many production orders are still open, how many production orders still needs to be created, etc., and create some sort of dashboard to see some details. And as you can see, I drew a picture, okay, like this little box with few boxes inside it, which are like buttons. So in each button, I expect to see something different. Only from this drawing, Q developer actually understood or scanned the picture to understand what we see here. So he understood that I have buttons, I have a logic behind the buttons, and let's skip a little bit in order to see what it actually developed. Okay.
Yeah. It has to play from beginning.
from the beginning. Sorry.
Yeah. So in this, then surely that means like if from an ABAP developer's perspective, right? So whenever we do an object-oriented ABAP, OOPS ABAP kind of a programming, we have class diagrams and everything, right? So definitely we can just provide those diagrams to Q developer and ask it to build a class for us, right?
Yeah. So basically, we can ask it to scan the page, build the application, confirm it with the end user. You can see all the buttons that were created in the screen. And then, of course, if he wants me to add something, then I can do it directly in this session, in this meeting with him, and only then get to the developer.
Okay. All right.
If you work with the UI UX team, in this case, I will try to run it from here and not touch it. So if you work with the UI UX team, then basically they will provide you a picture, an image of exactly what the application is supposed to look like. In this case, they will give you the exact colors and the exact inches, sizes, and everything that the picture is supposed to look like. So in this case, we can just upload the picture with the metadata behind it, if we have it, and then ask it to produce the application directly. Let's see, I don't want to touch it now because I'm afraid that it will not allow me. But you can see in just a few minutes how it actually creates everything. You can see initially that it scans the document, scans the image, and maps all the fields that we can actually see in the layout. It actually identifies the icons and also the sizes and everything that needs to be extracted, and if I have checkboxes as well, and then it connects to the tables behind the scenes that it should draw the data from. We can also use mock data because maybe initially we don't want to link it to anything yet, but then later on we can. Okay, let's see. So you saw the image initially, and this is what was created for us. The checkboxes were created automatically, the columns, the selection screen, or the filters, sorry, the titles, the header, the icon did not come, okay? So it's not perfect, it's not 100%, but you can see the colors as well. You can see the option to change the document. In this case, it's requisitions. But of course, this is a very good start. Instead of the user to be able to build it by himself, you get it in one sentence. You just upload the picture, and you ask it to create it, and then it being created. Now, this is a very good base to start your programming. So if you don't like what you see, or if you are missing some details, then you can also chat. You can chat with Q. You see you have this chat box, and then you can write the text of what you want to create. It doesn't run.
Yeah.
Okay. So in this use case, basically we try to create an application using the BTP features. Okay? So we open a project, and then we choose what format we want to use, and we get created this ALV type of a front-end screen. Okay? It's like a report. But what we see behind the report is that when I want to double-click it, you will see in a second, then I don't get anything down, because that means that I need to program the other screens as well, because if I want it to be double-click and create something behind it, then I need to define it. In this case, it's not being defined because I didn't do it myself. So you see the screen is empty. So instead of going back and then build it by myself, what I asked is that I explained to him the details of the documents were not created. So since they are not created, please build them for me. I didn't even tell him what details I wanted. I could have told them, I want the delivery, I want the quantity, I want to be able to edit it, I want to create a pop-up screen, et cetera, et cetera. In this case, I didn't say it, and I expected it, Q, to understand by itself, according to the business logic and the document that was created initially. So let's see what we got. So you see, I explained that it's empty. So he knows where it needs to intervene. By the way, Q supports multiple languages. So if you're not, if your customers are not from the US or UK, then it's perfectly fine to write in a different language. It supports many languages. We can check according to you. Until now, do you have any questions? No? Okay. Okay, let's see what was created. So you see, yeah?
Just one general question. It seems like you showed a few different tools. So which are the tools that you're actually showing here? And would the same thing work, for example, in Fiori or VS Code, or like or is it what's behind it that matters? What are the actual tools that are able to do all this that you're talking about?
So I'm referring to Q Developer. And Q Developer can be installed either on BTP, which is what we see in this example, or in VS Code, which is BTP is based also on VS Code. It can be also installed in Eclipse. And Kiro is based on Q, you can say.
So all those tools as well as the Q Developer behind them.
Yes, exactly. By the way, it doesn't work only for ABAP or for SAP workloads. Okay, you can create it also with other languages, other programming languages as well. So here you can see the screen that was created based on my natural language request. Just create the second screen, and you can see that I have the option to edit. And since Q understood the context of the document that is being used here, it allowed me to change the quantity in this case, and it integrates to my SAP environment automatically. So in natural language, I can create a full functional application, not only the front end, but also the integration to my SAP environment.
All right.
Okay, so until now, we saw documentation. We saw how Q Developer can really assist functional consultants with either documentation, create functional specifications or technical specifications, and also document existing code, which is very helpful in order to understand what happened in our organization years before. We can also know now how to interact with our end user in order to build Fiori applications, something that it's going to be very visualized with the end user in order for him to understand what he's going to get from this development. But Harsh, let me ask you something.
Sure.
Regardless of this, which is great,
Okay.
what would it mean about the ABAP code, for example? I mean, if I think about companies that we saw are now, they have ECC.
Right.
And in the future, hopefully soon maybe, they would want to migrate to RISE in the cloud, or maybe SAP native in the cloud, or just do an S4 upgrade. What does Q Developer can help us to achieve in this move?
All right, so actually that's the same question I had when I was exploring Amazon Q Developer specifically for ABAP actually. So the main challenge that we have, right, for ABAP development is the code compilation, the syntax checks, the ATC checks, and all those things. Because unlike the open source programming languages like Node.js or Python, where we install the dependencies, the packages, right, the NPM packages, PIP packages, which help us with the node compilation and all, code compilation and all. When it comes to ABAP development, the code needs to be there in SAP dev environment, like SAP database. There only it can do the syntax checks, it can act, and it needs to be activated. So after running the syntax checks, we need to activate the object, run the ATC checks to make sure the performance reviews are done, security checks are done, naming conventions if the organizations have their own naming standards. So all those things, ATC checks helps us. So for this very particular reason, right, so we developed a solution called ABAP Accelerator, which takes care of this entire workspace. So how exactly ABAP Accelerator works is basically it's an extension to Amazon Q Developer. It's an MCP server-based extension which leverages ADT APIs to do the syntax checks, to compile the ABAP code, push the code actually in the SAP system. So whenever we ask Q Developer to write a code, right, let's say in Node.js or in Python, it creates the files in local packages. compiles them, and then we do a git push to the repos. For ABAP development, the code needs to be pushed in the ABAP SAP database. So for that, we use ADT APIs in the ABAP accelerator, which helps us to do that. So why ABAP accelerator? So other than what all things I just mentioned, right? So for ABAP development, specifically for reports or for classes, so we don't write the entire code in a single program, single SE38 program, no. So we have multiple includes, tops where we do data declaration, forms where we write the actual business logic. We might have event handling, some classes or some interfaces which we might have developed for event handling, some RFCs. So there are a lot of dependencies among different objects, ABAP objects, when it comes to a single application. So what ABAP Accelerator does over here, it crawls through your source code. So let's say you make a query saying that, okay, analyze this particular report for me. So it reads the first report, it identifies what are the dependent custom objects, and it brings those source code as well to understand the entire perspective, what exactly the code does, what exactly that application does, to give you more detailed information. That's why we use ABAP Accelerator.
Nice, very interesting. And can you walk me through the steps on how I'm supposed to achieve it, how QDeveloper and the ABAP Accelerator can help me?
Sure, absolutely. So let's assume a scenario where we are doing a migration, or ECC to S4 or ECC to cloud native or RISE migrations. So the first stage that we do is prepare and plan. So it's kind of a reverse engineering, like whatever custom objects we might have developed, we would like the AI assistant to understand, QDeveloper to understand what is the core logic, the business logic, and how we can modernize that code. Let's say if you're migrating from on-prem to cloud, so the reports won't work in cloud. For that, we might have to develop a RAP-based application. So how many of you are familiar with RAP-based development, SAP's RAP-based development, RESTful API programming? Okay, all right. So the RAP-based development is nothing but SAP's strategy to have the exact same application which you had on your on-prem system for cloud environments. So for that, the development starts from the base CDS layers, go all the way up to the service layers. So it basically helps you to create a Fiori application or an API, OData V2 API, V4 API quickly. So that's why we switch with, or SAP recommends us to switch on the RAP-based development. So like I said, the first stage is prepare and plan, wherein with the help of ABAP Accelerator, you will ask your developer to, let's say you want to modernize a particular report or object. You will ask it to analyze, it will analyze the code, give you the core business logic, create a detailed documentation if that's the requirement that you have in the journey. And it can also not just create the documentation, it can store it on any of the shared workspaces. Let's say if you are using SharePoints or Confluence, Atlassian Confluence, right, for storing the documentations. So it can store the objects over there. So after the plan and prepare phase comes the development. So once we have analyzed all the objects, all the entire business logic, we start with development. Now here I'll show you a quick demo. You can stop me in between, okay? It's a little bit technical demo, just to give you a heads up. Okay, let me switch. I hope you are able to see the screen clearly. All right, perfect. So here what I'm going to do is, I'm going to ask QDeveloper to first analyze this and create a Fiori compatible version of this entire report, whatever it's doing, right? Okay. It's loading, just a moment.
Does anyone have a question until it will be loaded? Yeah, please.
That link at the bottom, is that accessible?
That link, no, that's an internal link. But in the end, we'll share the QR code which has all the demos and everything for you to go through again. Yeah. We'll share those details with you.
By the way, if you want to get some hands-on experience with QDeveloper and with the tools that you see today, then tomorrow there is a builder session that you can experiment with it.
All right. Okay, so as you can see over here, we have this report which we normally write. And as you can see, there are multiple includes in it. The main report doesn't have a lot of code, just start of selection, end of selection, that's it. So my expectation over here is Q developer should crawl through all the includes, understand the program first, and then come up with a cloud migration strategy, like what all artifacts we require, how those needs to be created, which objects, which table it needs to refer to. And then we'll see how it proceeds. So as you can see, the prompt that I gave was like completely analyze the report and help me create a RAP-based Fiori application that will perform, because we don't want to lose the integrity of our core business logic, right? We would like to see the same functionality in the modernized version as well. So it needs to be clear enough. And not just creating or writing the source code is something that I'm expecting Q developer to do. Let's say if you use JIRA for project management. So it should be able to create relevant user stories, epics, tasks, everything for you, so that you can easily track all this development on your dashboard, JIRA dashboards. So as you can see, and this is what I was talking about, the ABAP accelerator. So the tools that you see, right, get source. So that's a tool which is available in our MCP server. So it first gets the source code of the main report, and then it reads through it, it understands. There are a couple of dependent objects, and brings that as well. And once it has all the information, right, here you go. So it comes up with the analysis first, like the core functionality, what it is, the key features, and then it starts creating the JIRA stories for me. So in Q developer, right, there are something called rules. So what I defined in rule is that whenever you're creating an object or writing a JIRA story, make sure you're documenting everything, so that later on, if I want to review things, right, it should be easier for me to track all the things that it did. So as you can see, it's looking for a Confluence page. It's looking whether there is a repository that's already available, the workspace that's already available where it can store this documentation. And everything it's doing on its own, with very minimal human interaction.
Yes, please.
So its ability to do whatever you're saying it can do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How effectively that program has been created using the standards and things like that. I'm pretty sure it has some dependency on that. Sometimes you may have created a program using some hard code and things like that. So how does this deal with that kind of a suboptimal kind of a programming effort?
So so let's say if you want to have Q developer to review your code before creating a new one, right? You can definitely ask it. So whatever knowledge it has from all the public spaces. So the hard codings, the naming conventions, the what we call the text element creations and all, right? So it takes care of all those things for you. And let's say even if it misses, in the ABAP accelerator, we have a tool for ATC checks as well. So you can configure your own variant for the ATC check. You can write it like in the variant, you can mention what is the naming convention that you follow, what are the checks that you want every time that application to go through whenever you develop an object. And you can just ask your dev, okay, can you run the ATC check using the particular variant which you created? And that's it does it for you. And it not just runs the ATC checks, whatever issues are flagged in that execution, it rectifies those as well. It will ask you, okay, so do you want me to rectify those, or are you going to do it? So it will go back to the source code, make the changes as well.
Once it provides that kind of analysis,
Mm-hmm.
probably it is better for us to review what it is doing, what it has provided, and get comfortable with the output, or at least for some programs before you can probably let it go and
run the changes. Yeah. So very good point. So that's why, right? Like whenever it's referring or it's recommending a tool to make the changes or to update the source code, right? It gives you the control whether you want to run it or not. So let's say it came up with the like I'll show you further as well in the demo that when it asks me to update, when it says that it needs to update a source code, it waits for me to respond before doing anything. Yeah, absolutely. You're right about that. So as you can see, like it even came up with the RAP base, like what exactly it needs to create, the parent-child dependency, the manage with draft scenario. Okay, so here it started creating the objects, but what it missed was it forgot to create the JIRA stories. So I just reminded Q developer that, okay, you wrote the documentation, but I need the JIRA stories as well. So I just told it, like, before creating the object, like, create the JIRA stories for me. And then it goes and does that for me as well. And in the stories, right, you can have all the details. See, if there is a template which you might have created, right, so it will create the stories using those templates for you completely. So that in the story you can read, like, what it's doing, what it analyzed, what are the things that it should look for. So here it clearly identified the project which was already existing. If not, then it creates the project for you as well. And as you can see, it started creating the task, first the epic, then the story, the list of tasks it needs to be there.
And you can review it along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And by the way, if it recognizes something that is hard-coded or something that it doesn't recommend, then it will show you and it will give you the recommendation on how to change it. And you can choose either to adopt it or not. And there was another question here. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
So last year, I think last year, the interface for is that gone now?
What interface?
What?
Separate ID. I think, so a couple of years back, so I think the Amazon Q developer actually came in last year. Before that we had Code Whisperer. No, Kiro is new. Yeah, I think that was a Code Whisperer that is gone now. So it's now Q developer, which is integrated with all the different IDs like IntelliJ, Eclipse, and VS Codes and Bash.
Second question I have is like there's an ABAP extension for SAP, right?
Uh-huh.
So similarly, we have extensions for .NET, coding, and Linux and all those stuff too.
So for .NET, I think it does. Yeah, it has out-of-the-box support for .NET. Yeah.
I mean, it's using different LLMs,
Right.
It's based on that knowledge it's using. Does not have any question.
I'm sorry, the question was not clear to me.
Using Sonnet 4, right?
Right.
So it's depending on Sonnet 4 to give you the one.
Response, yeah.
So, but for ABAP, we have its own extension as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they sit in your environment and learn from your tools. What are coding practices you're using? Builds over time.
Mm-hmm.
So does absolutely also has some similar.
So that depends on you. So in Q developer, there is a setting where you can enable for basically it analyzes your usage metrics and it recommends. So over the span of like say 2 months or 3 months when you use Q developer continuously, right? It understands what are the day-to-day interactions you have, and then whatever interactions you had in the past, it uses that as a reference and starts giving you the recommendation. But that's totally up to you. If you want to disable it, you can disable it. So for pro tier and free tier, there are 2 different tiers for Q developer. Free tier, it's always enabled by default. Pro tier, you have the control whether you want to enable it or disable it. Sorry. Yeah, okay. So if you keep it enabled and continuously use it for a month, 2 months, then it understands that, okay, what are the day-to-day interactions that you have, and then it comes up with the recommendations accordingly, like follow-up. Then you don't need to instruct or give the instructions, very specific instructions every time.
So in case of enterprise developer environment, where we have a team of not older developers, so they are using Amazon Q
Mm-hmm.
for building. You want to share best practices, the prompts, so and like the standards which everyone should follow.
So what we can do? Rules-based development. Yeah, so what we can do is we can sit together after the session and we can do a detailed deep dive on all the questions that you have got. Does that work with you? Okay, all right then, great. Okay. No, you had a lot of interesting questions, so yeah, we can definitely meet. Okay, so here you go. So once it comes up with the strategy, right, which artifact it needs to create, the CDS view, the base views, the consumption views which sit on top of it, the behavior definition. So it not just gives you recommendation, you will see now it's creating each and every object, doing the syntax checks, activating the objects, making sure that all the base objects are created properly, because there is a lot of dependency when it comes to wrap-based development. If the base objects are not created properly, the follow-up objects will start failing. So it understands the significance of each and every step, and it makes sure that, okay, whatever it's creating, it's working. So once it creates the base view, then it goes a step ahead to create the interface view. I'll fast forward this a little bit. It's a pretty long, this one. Yeah, the most important aspect over here, which I'd like to point out, is behavior class implementations. So whenever we do a wrap-based development, so once we create the CDS views, on top of it, we create a behavior definition, which is aggregated with behavior class implementation. So what that behavior class has is the actual logic. Let's say if you have a custom field in your standard tables, right? So how those fields need to be updated, if there's a calculation required, or if you need to pull the data from some other tables, right? So all those logic comes in the behavior class, behavior implementation class. So QDeveloper, it not just creates the class for you, it will also generate the actual source code for that, for all those things. And the thing is, with these Fiori applications, right, we just don't want to do get, getting the data is pretty straightforward, but what is important is posting, like creating new records, updating existing ones. If you want to delete something, capability to delete the records. And for each and every changes which we commit, right, there needs to be a proper authorization being handled. So that all checks are done at the behavior definition level itself. So whatever code it's generating, when it does the syntax checks and activation, it makes sure that the dependent objects are also available before committing to anything. So it does the syntax checks. Also, sometimes you will see, right, so whenever it creates the CDS view, there is a circular dependency between the objects, like parent-child association. So if one is not created, the other one will fail. So it understands all those things. And sometimes, even with reports, regular reports, we need to activate all the objects together. So it understands all those things, that the objects needs to be activated together, and it does the job for you. So it does everything intuitively for the users. And what we have to do is, once all these artifacts are created, once all the source code is generated, all we have to do is review it, make sure that it's up to our standards. If there are any changes that we wanted to do, we can ask QDeveloper to do it, or we can do it on our own. But the point over here is, it creates you a really high quality base, boilerplate code, which you need to just tweak a little bit based on your requirements. Okay, so here it came with the behavior definition. All right. Now here you can see, right, in the end it created the service binding and everything for me. Now what I'm trying to do is, we can view this Fiori application in preview mode, just to check what data it's bringing from the tables, right? So when I do that, there is a small logic that's missing in the behavior class implementation. So when I was working on this demo, I realized that it missed this step. So, okay, I think I moved a little bit ahead. But to give you a context of that, is like it missed a logic which it was required to be there in the behavior class. And initially when I did the preview mode of the Fiori application, I couldn't see any data. So all I had to do was just tell QDeveloper that, okay, when I viewed the application in preview mode, no data was visible. And I know that the table has all the necessary data that I want to view. And it clearly understood that, okay, in behavior class implementation, there's an additional logic which it needs to add. It made the changes for you. And as you can see after that, right, after doing the changes, here is the final application that it looks like. So unpublish, yeah, this is the step, sorry. The bookings tab was empty. So I just told it, like, okay, this tab is still empty, doesn't show any data. Can you please review the code and make sure everything is there? And you could also see, like I'll show you in the end, when it created the Fiori application, it's not just one single screen. We pass through multiple screens, right? So it understands the requirement clearly. Here also it is missing the create by association implementation. So it created everything for you. Here is the logic of the source code and whatever updates it's recommending. And then let's say sometimes what happens is, even when updating the source code, right, there are instances where Q developer feels that, okay, it's doing a lot of tasks at a single time. So it breaks down the task into smaller ones, finishes those smaller ones, and then in the end it consolidates everything and brings you with the final application. It got the source code here. There are some errors. All I have to do was just tell it that the object still has some errors, and make sure you're updating it properly. Go back, the preview mode, and there you go. It brings you all the flight data, the different information, the booking details, and you can even do the edit, like I said, the put operations and all. And once everything is done, once all the artifacts are created, it automatically goes to the JIRA stories, update them, make sure that your development loop is completed altogether, like, nothing is left behind. Yeah, you had a question? No, okay. Yes, go ahead. That's just for better development tracking, so whatever artifacts that you're creating, it's not required, but just say you're using, JIRA stories for your project development or product development, right? We just wanted to show that Q developer can create those stories for you as well, and, help to ease your development life cycle. Yeah, absolutely. So whether you want one single developer to do it, or whether you want different developers to do it, that will be up to the development team altogether. But what we wanted to show over here is, so normally for this kind of development, right, it takes about 1 day, like without any AI coding assistance, like creating the stories, writing the documentation, and creating the final wrap application. And that's when the person is aware of how wrap applications are developed, what the existing source code is doing, what the legacy object is doing. So when they have all this information, they can do everything in 1 day. But what we want to show over here is how you can shorten that time span, development time span, with Q developer. Now the same person with the help of Q developer can achieve this task. So I did this in 1 hour actually. Within an hour, I created the documentations, created the Fiori application, created JIRA stories, closed the loop, did the unit testing. So even in SAP world, right, we have test-driven development where we create local unit test classes for checking the functionality of our source code. So it also creates the unit test for you, runs them, verifies the business logic and everything. And all this I was able to do in an hour. So we just want to show how it accelerates your ABAP development, whenever you're doing a migration or even with your day-to-day maintenance activities. Yeah. Uh-huh.
There's a lot of variants of different sales or
True. True.
So can the developer go and kind of look at the inventory and see like, oh, we already have a sales order report, we can make some tweaks.
So that is possible, definitely that is possible, but not with this solution. This is purely for development. So for that, there is another solution that might be required, which takes care of the functional aspect of SAP development. So it can make the OData calls, get the data, limited to based on how many records you want to see. So it can do that as well, Q developer. So all we have to do is just configure those MCP servers, and that's about it. Mm-hmm.
Sorry,
I could.
If you have a
Right.
So have you set it up? What do you have to do to the existing system to get it to work?
Yeah, so the MCP server, right? So you configure the MCP server same way you configure ADT on your Eclipse. You give the host URL, your logon credentials. It uses your username to create all these artifacts. So it won't do on its own. So whatever logon details you have when you configure your SAP system in Eclipse, right, with the ADT, same configuration details you need to provide to Q developer. So there is a workshop next tomorrow, I think. So in that you will see how you can configure this MCP servers and everything. It's a hands-on workshop. I recommend you to attend it. Yeah, it will answer a lot of your questions. So yeah, after the transformation, right? Like I said, the next step is the technical unit testing. And like I said, it creates the locally implemented unit test class or a completely different unit test class for you based on your standards. So with that, I hand it over back to Shirley.
Yeah, so I just wanted to invite you to scan those barcodes. In the first one, you can see the videos of our multiple demos that we have for Q Developer, including the Fiori applications and the MCP server that was just demonstrated and all the capabilities that Q can do. So I highly recommend it. You have the ABAP accelerator that we just saw. You can see the pricing and you can also see the blog. The blog is very explanatory both on how to install it and how to use it and the benefits that it can bring you to your customers and to your company from different various life cycle professions. For example, functional consultants, testing, QA, and also developers, of course, front end and back end.